Oh, we're live now. Okay, sorry guys. Hi. Welcome Dan and Adam. Welcome everybody to the Saratoga podcast. Happy Wednesday.
Hello, you too.
Hello. Excuse me for 1 second. I just there we go. Sorry, I had to go live on Instagram as well, which is new for us. You can watch us live stream on Instagram as well as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and so forth. So exciting addition for all the Instagrammers.
We are cutting edge.
Yeah.
Hey, it did just pop up as an Instagram. We are live.
Whatever platform
you're welcome, boys. You're welcome.
Whatever platform you're on, like and share. This is a how we gain our audience. But hey, there's a lot to get to today, guys. We have Duane Vaughn from Shelters of Saratoga on, and we also have some breaking news of another lawsuit filed against a member of our city council for workplace harassment, or better, not workplace harassment. This one was illegal termination. So you guys want to talk about that? Yeah.
I was going to say, should we start there?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you both had a chance to read it. I looked over. There was a 15-page suit that was filed with Saratoga County Supreme Court yesterday that contains allegations against a former employee, against Commissioner Duane Moran. Dan, you're probably going to be better at summing this up with your legal background, but the essence of it, after reading the 15 pages, was that she was improperly terminated, and that she was a whistleblower, and she was terminated because of what she was whistleblowing on, which was essentially Commissioner Moran not following New York State laws and procedures when it comes to the city assessment roles. And there was some mentions of personal favors, and it goes from there. But I would say that's kind of the overview. Would you agree, Dan?
Yeah, it's a classic whistleblower lawsuit under the labor law. One side, the city is going to say she was insubordinate, and she's saying, you fired me because I kept bringing things to your attention that were illegal or improper, or something like that. And these are just allegations; they're unproven. But when you read them, Robin, perhaps you felt the same way. It's kind of a bit unnerving as a resident of the city, if they are true. These are unproven allegations, but boy, they they did. They're a bit unsettling, I guess.
They were definitely concerning, because what it kind of outlined was, it seemed like a pattern of behavior in which she's accusing Commissioner Moran of ignoring, again, the procedure that was necessary in terms of how people's homes were going on the tax assessment roll, and kind of a willingness to circumvent those procedures to give people favors or to make things easier for people that Commissioner Moran was friends with, is kind of what it detailed.
Yeah, exactly. I'll walk through real quick. So the Preservation Foundation essentially acquired some properties, and legally the Preservation Foundation does not have to be being a not-for-profit, doesn't have to pay property taxes on those properties. But they just can't say we're not paying property taxes. There are forms, and they have to fill out. They have to provide documentation. It's a procedure. So the head of the Preservation Foundation, who I just want to add is, she's a great lady. They do a lot. The Preservation Foundation has historically done a lot for this city, but they just felt that this was kind of a burdensome. And again, these are the allegations of the complaint, that filling out these forms and finding this documentation would be burdensome. So Commissioner Moran essentially allowed them to circumvent this step in not having to pay the taxes on the property. The whistleblower, the assistant assessment,
assistant city assessor.
Thank you. She essentially stated that, listen, this is going against New York State law. It doesn't matter if you're friends with them, or if legally they probably don't have to pay the tax roll. They still have to go through the step of filling out the forms and providing the documentation. And essentially, that's where the issue arose. For me, that just seems like kind of lazy. And it's not horrible for me, but then it goes on to say how Commissioner Moran hired an outside firm to come in and do assessments, and how he seemed to, and this is kind of the open-ended part of this that would be interesting to see where it goes. That seemed to funnel a lot of contracts and seemed to be wanting to funnel a lot of contracts to this outside firm to do the assessments. Not only that, if she alleges that she thought when Marilyn Rivers was moved from the accounts to the mayor's office, that the money used for her salary, Commissioner Moran wanted to keep that money to pay this outside firm because there was no money allocated in the budget to pay this outside firm. So she goes on to allege more that this outside firm, Commissioner Moran was funneling a lot of the assessments to this outside firm, and without it being approved in the budget to do so. So, for me, that's intriguing, but it doesn't. There's no connection or no allegations that Mr. Moran was receiving any benefit for funding for pushing these contracts to this outside firm. But it was kind of heavily noted in this lawsuit. So, for me, this city council seems to be getting sued by former employees left and right, or including the former one. The Ron Kim administration just lost the lawsuit or settled for $100,000. For me, this is no way to run a city hall. This is absolutely outrageous. The voters, especially the Democratic voters in the city, don't seem to mind. I don't get it so much, but right now, I don't see anything egregious in this lawsuit.
Well, so wait, you don't see anything egregious as in terms of, because to me, it was just kind of this sum total kind of gave us an image of a pattern of behavior that I think sounds like it could potentially be in other areas of how this department is being run. It might not be an isolated incident the way this was kind of described in the lawsuit. I mean, that was kind of my takeaway. But again, I know this is all alleged, and so I'll be interested to see how it plays out. But certainly, it feels like there have been a lot of lawsuits. A lot of lawsuits seem to have come up.
And the tone of them tend to be consistent, right? There's just dysfunction. Again, this is really hot off the press. I'll read one sentence from it that sort of summarizes the whole thing, at least from one side, right? The city or Commissioner Moran has not, this is this was just filed. The city has not had a chance to answer, but plaintiff had significant concerns very early on as to Mr. Moran's failure to follow policies and potentially unethical behavior. And Adam, I mean, I guess I disagree with you to some degree that there's some things that are very concerning on here that, again, I've got my issues with Commissioner Moran, but I want to be as fair as I can to him on here. These are one-sided allegations so far. Yeah. We've all three of us have been clear about that. But if they are true, they are really bothersome. And it shows you, if this line is true, it shows you the silos in City Hall, the dysfunction. It talks about how they wanted to do something to share, the plaintiff wanted to do something to share data between the building department and the assessment office. And it's alleged here in this complaint that Commissioner Moran's quote, "I scrapped that. I do not want the mayor," and this was in Mayor Kim's time, "I do not want the mayor to get his hands on our highest paid vendor." So there's, as allegations, those are a concern. There's a court process to play out here. But man, can you imagine being the city insurer yet again to get this across your plate? I'm sure they have a lot of municipalities that are frequent flyers, so to speak, within their portfolio. But I think Saratoga is amongst those.
Yeah, and there was another mention of Mayor Ron Kim in that filing, where the woman Carrie who filed this lawsuit says that she met with Ron Kim after her termination, and Mayor Kim said something along the lines of, "Oh yes, Dylan has been out to get you." And I just, I think I've almost forgotten how much toxicity there was in City Hall in the previous administration. And just that one line was just kind of a reminder of how bad the interpersonal dynamics were.
Early in the term, right? Because Moran and Kim did not get along. Then the whole thing with Commissioner Montanino and Commissioners Moran and Mayor Kim suddenly were allies together against Commissioner Montanino. But early, they were almost bitter enemies. It was ugly. And
I do wonder
that period.
Dan, maybe you have some thoughts on this, why she would have taken so long to file this lawsuit. I was wondering if maybe it had to do with she saw the success of Marilyn Rivers' lawsuit and then decided to take her own action. because it has been a little chunk of time between her termination and what happened and the date of filing.
That, that's a reasonable guess on your part with that. I don't know. I don't know. She may have it may not have been a strategy. She, like you said, she may have just decided on her own, or she might just gotten upset at this point and said, I'm going to do something about this. I've had it. But the Maryland Rivers settlement, I'd have to think that is relevant.
I also just noted it wasn't at the end when it kind of like summarized what she was asking for. I didn't find it to be like, this egregious ask. It was basically like she wanted to be reinstated in her job. She wanted to be compensated for lost wages. And then it said, and a civil penalty not to exceed $10,000. Like it's not like she's asking for like, $500,000 or million.
Or $100,000. Seeing this precedent for $100,000 as the Maryland Rivers case. Yeah. Yeah. It does seem like she's just like, give me my job back. $10,000 is enough to say, hey, listen, you're wrong. You're guilty. Maybe this is kind of a punitive measure, but yeah, I think that's a great point, Robin. This is not one of those, I spilled coffee in my lap, give me $10 million lawsuits.
I'm wondering if that section of the labor law limits punitive damages to that amount, because otherwise, why would an attorney hold themselves? Because this was filed under the whistleblower law, under the state labor law, so the law itself may limit the damages.
Oh, good point. Yeah,
I don't know that. I'm guessing.
Yeah. I think the whistleblower law is connected to the amount of damages caused. If this person, if Commissioner Moran, if this costs the city or $40,000, the whistleblower. But I don't know, so let's move on.
But wait, if I could just point out, keep in mind she's asking for lost wages over a 2-year period. That would be now Justin, if she does win or settles or something, justify, but that will not be a small sum.
True. Well, listen, we will keep you all updated on how this progresses and if Commissioner Moran has any response to it. But in the meantime, I want us to take a little left turn here because we do have a very special guest that we would like to bring in and have a conversation with, Mr. Duane Vaughn. I think you're muted, sir, on your end.
There we go. I'm ready.
There he is. Welcome, Executive Director of Shelters of Saratoga, Duane Vaughn. We are so thrilled to have you on today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So right off the bat, I would love to point out that you guys have at Shelters of Saratoga a podcast that you started maybe six months ago, I want to say.
Yep, probably around that. Crossroads.
Yes, called Crossroads. And it is a fantastic podcast. For those of you who don't know about it or haven't listened to it, you can go to sheltersofsaratoga.org, their website, and there's a link to all the episodes. And I just have been really impressed with it because you use it as a vehicle to not just to kind of educate and inform, but in a way that really melds kind of information about our homeless population with also kind of personal stories in a way that I found to be really compelling. So I'm very impressed with the podcast.
Thanks. It was our first shot at it. And I've actually never done a podcast before. So it was new to me. And I was very grateful to have people that had that experience, Richard Klein and Peter Hopper and staff that helped out with it. And
look at you now. You're a podcast pro.
I don't know about that, but we're trying.
Making the rounds. Well, I just want to get right into it if we can. It's spring, it's April, things are warming up. And to me, that always signals, I'm always thinking of the end of the Code Blue season. Code Blue, for those, I think actually most of our audience knows what Code Blue is. I'm not even sure we have to go down and educate. But I would love to know how the Code Blue season went for you and kind of what the status is with Shelters of Saratoga, moving forward next year. But how did this year go? How did the season go?
So I think some of the highlights that I want to point out this year, that after this year, is that I've been with SOS now as the executive director for a little over 3.5 years. So this was my 4th Code Blue season. And one thing that has been more than evident in our numbers is that we've had a steady increase every single year. Average number of stay, unduplicated individuals, number of meals served. I mean, the growth keeps happening, and it's not just it's not just a Saratoga issue, it's a national issue. The growth is across the board in homelessness in our country.
And can you remind people where your current Code Blue shelter is located?
Sure. It's 120 South Broadway. It's the old Grand Union Motel. That's where we were this year, and actually we still are. We will be open tonight and tomorrow night. We've got real field temperatures dropping down to below 32. And but the long-term forecast looks like we're going to be shutting it down Friday morning.
Okay. Can you real quick, actually, Duane, maybe give people, tell people what the difference is between a Code Blue shelter versus the conversations we've had about a kind of a low barrier shelter?
Sure. So Code Blue is a state mandate in New York State. It was handed down by the governor years ago, where if the real field temperature, 32 degrees or below, happens, that each county has to have a plan to house people that are street homeless. So essentially what we're talking about, it could be, 34, 35 degrees, but if the wind's blowing and it's 32 or below, we have to open a shelter. So, well, actually, that's not completely correct. The county plan could use other options for housing. They could use motels, like some of our smaller rural counties might use motels to house people, or, there's all different types of venues that they may use. But for our county, the congregate seems to work best. We've used a couple of different models. We've been at for Adelphi Street, and we outgrew that location. We've outgrown locations every single year, and it gets more and more difficult to find that right location. Just to give you an idea, we served about 310 unduplicated individuals. And when I say that, I mean one person staying one night and not being counted again. That person not being counted again is an unduplicated individual. So our max capacity was around 75. We were at max capacity most of the season. We're looking at 170 days that we've been open.
Wow.
Wait, let me ask you a question, because this is something I struggle with our homeless population here in Saratoga. Saratoga has shown itself to be a very very kind, I think, generous city. And because of that, there's a lot of services for the homeless population. Homelessness is a spot issue, so it doesn't really necessarily matter where you became homeless, more where you are now. How does a city like Saratoga balance the fact of, okay, we do not want people on the streets, dying on the streets or freezing at night. We want to offer them shelter, but how do you balance that with the kind of, if you build it, they will come mentality of the more services we offer, the more of other area and other homelessness we will attract to our city?
Well, that's interesting, because I get asked that a lot, and I don't know if I have the right answer for that. If you build it, they will come. I think the point that I want to put across here is this is not a political issue. This is a human issue. What do people that are living on the street, or what do our fellow humans deserve for their health and safety? The numbers are huge. One of the things we talk about is that every January there's a point in time count that comes down from the federal government, where we go out and we count every single homeless person that we can find on a certain day in January, towards the end of January. So the point in time count numbers aren't out for this year yet, for this January's count, but last January they were, for Saratoga County, they were in the 320 range or so. And you're talking in January, is that an accurate count? Do we have the capacity to get out there and to be able to find these people? Are there some people, because it was a cold night, might have been staying with a friend or something like that? So it's a very difficult thing to count. I think when it comes to, if you build it, they will come. I think what we need to do as communities is we all need to get on the same page. What I mean is that Saratoga County has to be on the same page as Albany County and Schenectady County and all their surrounding counties. And then you're not going to get that transfer of people that are going back and forth. It does happen, not to the degree that people may think it does, though.
Thank you. If I could jump in with something here.
Sure.
one quick aside, I've been listening to a couple of the podcast episodes. I think it was your earliest one, or maybe your first or second one, where you talked about the history of homelessness and the city's response to it, maybe for the past 30 years. Duane, I really enjoyed that. And then you had one I listened to more recently where you were talking to people from Saratoga Hospital, and there's actually a physician's assistant that I didn't know. He goes into the woods and treats homeless people in the woods, which I was fascinated by. So folks, listen to that podcast. Give it one, give it a try. It's it's not fast moving. There's no music. But it's really interesting things that are talked about there. My quick question is, and I think I know the answer. If you're at 75 and it's 15 degrees outside and 8 more people show up, what do? I assume you find a way to make it work. You're not going to refuse them, right?
Oh no. So it comes down to the Code Blue initiative comes from the state, gets handed down to each county. So the county also has a responsibility during Code Blue. So if we're over capacity, we have to call the county and say, listen, we've got 3 people that just showed up. We do have the option, and they'll house them. They'll find a hotel room or something for them or some form of alternative stay. But we do have the option sometimes to push the limits a little bit where, we have a congregate area. We might have somebody just come in and sit, because the goal is to keep them from dying on the street, right? That's the purpose of Code Blue. And that's, if you want to get into the differences of low barrier versus Code Blue, I can do that for you.
Well, actually, one of the things that I think is important to keep in mind during this conversation is that our unhoused population is significant and different, and you can find them in different areas. And Shelters of Saratoga also has a location on Walworth Street where you house guests who are hopefully transitioning from being unhoused into some kind of permanent housing. And so how many folks do you have at your Walworth Street location at any kind of given time?
So that too has a waiting list. So we are typically at full capacity. Right now we're at 19 because we are under a pretty huge renovation project, excuse me, where we have the 2 shelters at 14 and 20 Walworth. They're going to be completely renovated through a state grant, and our capacity will go to 31.
Wow.
So the difference between the Walworth Street shelters and a low barrier or a Code Blue is that there are certain requirements when you come to structured shelter. For example, we have case managers on site, which we have had at Code Blue also, but our case managers at Walworth Street, their job is to get them settled in, help them find a job, help them connect to services. There are certain rules in place in structured shelter. For example, you need to be, you can't be using, or you have to be clean when you enter the shelter. You have to meet with your case manager. You have to work on goal plans. So, what we did when I first got here is I said, well, let's look at our length of stay, and let's look at our success rate for people leaving the shelter going to permanent housing, because that's our ultimate goal, right? Is as strange as this may sound, it's we kind of have the philosophy where, we want to do our job so I don't have to see you again. And we mean that politely, of course. But so we recognized that we needed to get our length of stay down, which we wanted to get down to 90 days or below. So that's a lot of work to do in 90 days with somebody who presents as homelessness, right? And we wanted to get our success rate for people moving into permanent shelter above that 50% mark, right? So the norm for shelters in New York State can be anywhere from 30 to 50%. We've got that rate up to 70%, which we're very proud of. So, the goal is get people in to stay a short amount of time, get that work hard, get that work done, get that investment for the people that present as homelessness, and move them on so they can go on with their lives.
That's incredible. I mean, hats off to you and your staff for getting that percentage up to 70%. That is a tremendous success rate.
Well, I have to say it's staff, They do a heavy lift. There's a lot of people, especially, I can't say enough about our direct care staff. Those are the people that are working those, evening shift and overnight shifts that are building those relationships and helping guide them and getting them through the weekend or whatever it might be, because we don't know what it's like to live in their shoes.
Right.
The perception versus reality of homelessness, right?
I think what's also really important, though, is kind of when you hear about Code Blue and the folks who are staying at Code Blue, because truly we don't want them to freeze in the street. They're freezing. They need someplace warm to stay, but they might be habitual drug users. They might have some mental health issues. They might be living on the street, when the temperatures accommodate that, versus the folks who are at your Walworth Street location who are in a completely different situation, but we still, group all these folks under the same umbrella, despite the fact there's such a huge difference in terms of what their situation might be.
Well, they could be at a different stage of homelessness. And,
Right.
when it comes to dealing with addiction and alcoholism, things like that, that happens in our general population. And I think people need to recognize that.
Right.
One study that I really like to point out to have people look at is a study done by the United Way. And it's very easy to Google. If you Google United Way ALICE, which stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. It's a study on the working poor that comes out every 2 years. And when we've got 40% of New Yorkers who are living paycheck to paycheck or below, there's a lot of people that are on the precipice of coming to a Code Blue or coming to a Walworth shelter, where it could be a flat tire on the way to work, or it could be a medical bill or something like that, or the loss of childcare, which push people in really hard situations.
Absolutely. Now, the city has always kind of, seems to me, been involved a little bit with helping address the homeless population and coming up with solutions for shelter. And then they kind of pull back and then they're back in again. And it depends a bit on the administration. What kind of role is the city playing now in terms of helping with, a Code Blue location for next year, or whatever your needs might be? How kind of involved are they? Can you give us a sense?
I think the current administration, I'm very happy to say that they are invested in helping us solve these problems. I've seen, I get regular calls from various members from City Council or from Mayor Safford that wants to keep talking about solutions. So the conversations are solution based. It's kind of in its infancy now with this administration. We talk about the task force, right? That happened a year and a half ago or whatever it was. I think it was good. There was, they opened the conversation that these things, that we need to find solutions. And now we're kind of moving towards that task force 2.0 that we want to get to, which, I really believe we're going to get there.
So just a quick interject and let people know what you're talking about, Duane. Mayor Ron Kim put together a task force on homelessness that met several times. And then I believe last July, so like July 2023, came out with some recommendations as to where a location, identifying a location for a shelter that would be more than just a Code Blue shelter. It would be a year-round shelter, which would also possibly have kind of a navigation center element to it. And so that was kind of what they were tasked with, correct? Like coming up with a location was their primary objective?
Correct. Yeah, and there was some locations that were put forth. We haven't really looked into those locations. I'm not sure if they're going to fit or not. But one of the things is that if we're going to do something, we know that the zoning has to match what we want to do, or it's not going to happen.
Right.
That if it's a city or a county-owned property, it's going to be much more in our favor to be able to do the things that we need to do. There's our down the road plans are, yes, we absolutely must come up with a permanent Code Blue location. We will be going to 120 South Broadway one more year this year. I have reason to believe that if the trending keeps going where it's going over the last couple of years, that we're going to possibly outgrow this location, because we were maxed out anyway. So we kind of outgrew it anyway. But to be able to find a location with the right building to be able to do the work that we need to do is absolutely critical. Just because you can hold 75 or 80 people in a facility doesn't mean it's the best facility. So
Right.
we need to find something where we can do the work. So, doing some form of off code blue low barrier shelter, that's not out of the question. It just has all the right elements have to come in place to be successful with that, because you're not going to get the same successes in a low barrier shelter than you do with structured shelter.
If I could ask for a little more clarification on the code blue and the low barrier, just so people understand the differences. Code blue is what we're talking about earlier. That's generally for the 32 degrees real temperature and below. That's to keep people alive, right? And that's separate. It could be connected to the low barrier shelter, but it's separate, right, Duane, from the whole issue of the low barrier shelter, which is and by low barrier meaning they don't have the requirements that you mentioned earlier to be clean and so forth. We're just going to get you into this shelter and try to help you navigate and get you involved, right? And that right now is it fair to say finding a location for that is I don't want to say nowhere because it sounds so negative, but there's a lot of work. There's no site that's been picked. There's no site that's been purchased or obtained or anything like that, right? It's still in a planning phase. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. But we've had very good conversations with Saratoga County. Saratoga County has been a great partner with Shelters of Saratoga. We appreciate everything they do. The supervisors, the Department of Social Services, Adult Protective, all of them have been really investing in helping us be successful. But we do have to find that location. Now, currently the low barrier shelter, unlike the Code Blue or different from the Code Blue, has served a purpose and it's been effective and helped people. We recognize that. We've done our best to have open conversation and working together with Rise, who runs that. And I think that good things have happened. But we need to go the step further. There's conversations about moving Code Blue out of the city. It possibly is an option. It's something that we're not opposed to. But one of the things we will need, though, in the city is we'll need some form of a hub. It doesn't mean that people will stay there or overnight or anything like that, but some form of hub where we can get people to the Code Blue, right? Transportation is a huge barrier. Maybe have some of those navigation services in this hub. But, we tend to see that a lot of the county's homelessness will congregate where they can receive services, where there is transportation, and those things are not in our rural parts of our county.
It seems to me it's just as someone who's been involved in this issue for a decade plus in the city, it's so frustrating because it does seem like location and transportation are kind of the biggest barriers to moving forward and evolving in a way that the city wants to evolve, that Shelters of Saratoga wants to evolve. And I'm not sure people realize, for example, you mentioned the social services and the Department of Social Services. That exists within Saratoga County and exists within their facilities that are in Ballston Spa. So if you are homeless in Saratoga Springs, just getting there to connect to those services and the requirements that are necessary to make those services available to you, the amount of roadblocks is really staggering to get from point A to point B. And so I know that's one of the reasons why when we've spoken about kind of the perfect situation, it would involve some kind of shelter that had that navigation center component attached so that when we have people, kind of captive, so to speak, there are people there that could connect them with these services and kind of solve that issue of having to go to Ballston Spa and connect with them there and hopefully get more people connected.
Sure. I mean, you can't, this goes back to a study that happened, I think, in 2019 in the city of Saratoga with Aaron Healy, right?
Yes. Yep, correct.
And Aaron talked about the inflow and outflow of homelessness, right? So your inflow, your number of people that are coming or presenting as homeless, your outflow, people leaving homelessness, has to be greater if you're going to solve the problem.
Right.
So how do you do that? You got to do that with connection to service. You've got to do that with affordable housing. You've got to do that with transportation. All those components have to come in place. It's really hard for people that are homeless to work on all these different aspects of their needs when they're trying to figure out where they're going to get their next meal.
Exactly.
I think what we need to do as communities is we need to figure out what our legacy is going to be. Do we want to be that community that makes sure that we take care of and not shut out the people that need us most? We need to make sure that we're all in this together. And, frankly, since I've been in Saratoga this 3.5 years, I've met so many wonderful people that want that. But I've also ran across certain aspects of people who just don't understand homelessness. There's a little bit of that pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality, which it's not subject to only Saratoga. It's really a national issue. It's really hard to pull yourself up by your bootstraps when you don't have boots.
Could we also just quickly talk about, because this is something that really bothers me personally, people's perception of panhandlers and vagrancy, and equating that with, oh, that's representative of our homeless population. When in my mind, the true groups of people couldn't be more different. Vagrancy and panhandling, it's always been my philosophy that, we see panhandlers in Saratoga Springs because they can make money here. We have a vibrant downtown, and people who are giving panhandlers money, so they can make a lot of money, more so than they could probably in any other surrounding area. But kind of reducing the number of panhandlers we have isn't solved necessarily through all these different housing solutions we're talking about, because it's a different group of people and we're not necessarily talking about our unhoused population. Is that kind of somewhat accurate, Duane?
Yes. I think the alternative to handing money is supporting the services that are out there. And I'm not just talking about SOS. There's so many other agencies that provide services to homeless. There's Wellspring and Healing Springs and Captain and Rise and so many of these agencies. We have the tools and the expertise to help these people, and not all panhandlers in that you see are homeless. Panhandling, the easiest way to put this, it comes down to economics. So if you have the best location for a storefront in Saratoga, and there's a panhandler in front of that, well, they're running by the same economic theory as that person is, right? Well, my store makes good money here because I have a great location. Well, panhandlers can make good money because they're in a good location. If you go out into the countryside of Greenfield Center, you're not going to see 2 or 3 people on a corner panhandling. So it comes down to economics. Can panhandlers make more in Saratoga than they can in other communities? I would venture to say yes, they could. We have a robust tourist economy here. There's a lot going on. It's a great community. And I think the other thing we have to understand is that the perception, and actually the reality is Saratoga is a safe community. So a lot of these components come into play why somebody might want to panhandle here. But the solution to me is support the agencies that are going to do the work, that are going to help them find the housing, help them find the job, help them do those things that it's so hard for them to do on their own that simple panhandling is not going to solve.
Exactly. So I always say to people, don't give money to a panhandler, because you're not actually helping the problem you think you might be helping, and rather support our local agencies, as you just said.
Sure.
What would you say? Sorry, guys, feel free to jump in if you have questions. I don't mean to be dominating here.
but also, Robin, people can comment as well. A reminder.
Yes, we actually have, let me put up, we have 2 comments from our current county supervisor, Michelle Madigan, who says the county is working hard to find a permanent facility for Code Blue. As supervisor, we've met with county public health, the county administrator, and at this time, things are moving in a positive direction. We really appreciate that. Michelle Madigan is the city's representative at our Saratoga County Board of Supervisors. And as Duane just, said, working with all these different agencies and groups is kind of critical in finding a solution, especially Saratoga County. So
Duane, let me jump in with a question, Duane. Is there, for people who come in and hear that, listen, the population keeps growing, it's a national problem. Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel? I know, at one hand, you're like, listen, I'm just a man. I'm going to come here and do everything I can to change that flow, right? To get more people going out than coming in. And we applaud you and commend you for that. But is there something you see as a light at the end of the tunnel for this trend to stop and start to move the other way? Or is this something that, we just don't have an answer for yet?
Sure. Well, I could tell you this, my naivety when I first got into working with homelessness over 20 years ago, I remember writing my first grant. And one of the things you had to do, writing a federal grant and a lot of the state grants, is part of your grant had to have a 10-year plan to end homelessness.
Oh, wow.
We're 20 years down the road here, and I've seen the population grow. Now, we are I think we're at a critical apex here. It's in front of the Supreme Court right now, right? It is one of the number one topics in every election, Saratoga included. What are we going to do about our homeless population? I am hopeful that we're going to turn the corner soon and really start to invest in this issue. It needs it. Too many people are getting left behind, and I can tell you that it's non-discriminatory. I see veterans. Right now, we're seeing a very large increase in elder homelessness at Walworth Street. We've had people at Code Blue and at Walworth that are in their 80s. One story that kind of sticks in my mind is that I think it was last year or the year before at Code Blue, we had a 77-year-old homeless veteran. He ended up passing away, and his funeral service had one representative from the Veterans Administration, and the three other people that were at his service were our staff. So why, we have to stop and ask ourselves, how can this be happening to our veterans, our seniors, our youth, domestic violence victims? The gamut is full ranging of people suffering from homelessness, and we have to get moving on this. I can't stress that enough.
If there was one thing the community could be doing to help you in this effort, like what would you like that to be? I don't know if that's a answerable question, but
it is. I'd say understand our homelessness, understand the issues and what their struggles are, understand that it is more difficult than ever today to try to get on your feet. We see that with young people that are staying longer in their parents' homes, right?
Right.
I know Gen Xers like myself and you guys we're 18, we were gone, right? We were out of the house. We could be independent. It wasn't that hard for us to be. It's different now. Nothing is keeping pace with our housing markets. People are priced out of homes, priced out of renting, and forced to live in very rural areas where there is no transportation, where there is no daycare. So the issues that our folks that are presenting as homeless today are under so many difficult challenges that I have not seen in my career, in my 20 some years of this. So I think for the community is educate yourself, that, get those stigmas out of your head that everybody is addicted. Everybody
Right.
has mental health. Everybody is a criminal. It's just not true.
Well, I can say, as someone who had Code Blue on my block for 3 seasons, just a couple doors down from where my family and I live, some of the kind of NIMBYism that we see in Saratoga Springs, people who want to help with this issue but don't want to have it close by to where they live. I just want to briefly touch on that because my experience over those 3 winters was such an incredibly positive experience. I ended up volunteering, you know, as much as I could there and really getting to know the population. And it was one of the most eye-opening, educational experiences I've ever been through, and really educated me on who the homeless in our city were. And also just kind of the level of desperation people were at was so just like it just broke your heart. But this was also the most respectful, kind, and caring group of people. And so not only was it an education for me, but it was an education for my kids. And it really, again, just opened our eyes to homelessness in Saratoga and made me personally that much more invested in solutions.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. We've had a lot of good volunteers this year. You know, there was about 11,600 meals that were provided at Code Blue this year. If you stop and think about that number, they were all provided by local restaurants and local volunteers. And and meals and beds, believe it or not, are not a requirement for Code Blue.
Really?
Yes, they are not. Code Blue can be simply a warming station, but we have to recognize that humans deserve dignity and a place to put their head down at night. And there's a lot of discussion about nationally, right, about people sleeping on park benches and things like that. Well, frankly, for the homeless populations, it's safer to sleep during the day.
Right.
Than it is at night when they can be victimized, where they might have to stay awake and stay moving because it might be cold. There's a lot of reason behind some of these factors that our homelessness folks experience.
Well, having kind of this kind of understanding the homelessness in our city had to be one of the impetuses for starting your Crossroads podcast. And for people who want to kind of understand the issue better, I feel like that's the best place to send them. I mean, you really do that in a compelling and informative way on the podcast.
Well, thank you. We've got some great ones lined up. We've got our 2 local police officers that do the community engagement piece, officers. We're going to bring them on, which is great because they have been really great at Code Blue. They've been able to come by and they see us when we're not calling them, right? Mm-hmm. So they're able to be a part of essentially our staff and to be able to get to know the people that we work with. And I think it's been eye-opening for them, and they have been critical into helping that relationship between police and homelessness. They're 2 very understanding young men that do a great job. So we're really looking forward to getting them on next.
That is awesome. That's awesome. Because that's a whole other component we hadn't even talked about, was kind of the interaction between law enforcement and this population. But that's fantastic. And this is kind of a new endeavor, having these 2 officers specifically be tasked with kind of getting to know our homeless population and working with you guys, correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
They've been doing great. They really have.
That is great to hear. Well, we've kept you for quite some time, Dan and Adam. Unless you guys have any other questions, we should probably let Duane get back to it because he's certainly got a full plate.
All right, Duane, keep working, making the world a better place. We appreciate you and all you're doing and all that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Duane. Thank you to Shelters of Saratoga, and thank you. And everybody go check out the Crossroads podcast. We'll talk soon.
Yep.
I mean, I'm always just consistently so impressed with what Shelters of Saratoga has done, continues to do, their depth of knowledge and the way they've been able to navigate all the challenges in the city to get to where they are now. I'm always so impressed by it.
Yeah, I don't think I always agree with some of these things these groups do, but with that being said, Duane is just an amazing character. I met him when I first ran for office as Commissioner of Finance, and he just is. He's just such a caring, knowledgeable, really empathetic, but really smart guy who's out there doing a lot of good. So, the world needs more guys like him.
Yeah.
I'm consistently amazed by people. Again, I'm like, thank, because I'm not sure if I would do well in his role. There's certain roles that I couldn't do. Thank God there's people like him that do well and do excel in those roles.
I mean, I just feel like there's so many things that could potentially deter you from continuing to want to work in the space that he's in, you know, whether it's setbacks with the administration, what it's setbacks with the community, setback, you know, and to not be deterred and to keep working towards the goal they're working towards. And also to get their success rate up to 70% of people who are transitioning out of their wall work shelter is just incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of encouragement from this interview we just had. Everybody's getting along, it seems. The county, the city, the service providers like SOS and so forth. That, you know, a year, 2 years ago, it was a lot of ugliness there.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, anyway, you guys, we have like 5 minutes. Do you want me to give a quick school board election recap really quick before we sign off here?
Yeah, I know. It's the school board election's creeping us on us up on it.
And I'll have one brief update on short-term rental legislation.
All right, should I go first or do you want to go first? You tell me, Dan.
Go.
Okay, so yes, it is school board election season and it completely snuck up on me as well. I was like, you know, okay, this is happening. So every year there are 3 school board positions that are up for election. This year, the election is being held on May 21st. And as far as I'm aware, there are 4 candidates running, 2 of whom have been on the school board, Amanda Ellithorpe and Connie Wyatowicz. They're both running for re-election. And then there are 2 other candidates, Deb Amory and Matt Copens, who are also running to get one of those seats. I know about Deb and Matt because of information that was on the Saratoga Springs Democratic City Committee page. So as in past years, this is like right off the bat, like a little bit political, which has been something we've experienced with, you know, the last several school board elections, but always continues to kind of surprise me a little bit. So the information I can give you quickly about Deb and Matt. Deb Amory has been a resident of Saratoga Springs for 12 years. I'm just going to read it as she wrote it. When my wife and I moved to Saratoga for work and also to raise our son here. Our son is now a junior at high school, having previously attended Maple Avenue and Division Street Elementary. During those years, we've tried to help him navigate a global pandemic and the uncanny world of social media. These are new and challenging times for everyone, and we've just been so grateful for the teachers and school administration who have reached out and helped make our son feel welcome and encouraged his intellectual curiosity. She is a professor and chair of social sciences and public affairs department at Empire State University. And she then goes on to talk about, you know, her background and so forth. And you can find that on saratogadems.org. Matt Copens says, "Hi, I'm Matt Copens. I'm excited about the opportunity to run for a seat on the Saratoga Springs Board of Education to make sure that our schools continue to strive for the best outcomes for our students and our collective future. I have been involved in the community since moving to Saratoga County in 2006, working for and volunteering with not-for-profit organizations in the arts, healthcare, environment, and education." And then he goes on to talk about, you know, his kind of goals and philosophy for running for the school board. There is until May 1st for people who are interested in running to turn in their petitions and get on the ballot. You need 100 signatures, and the completed petitions need to be brought back to the business office at the high school by 5 p.m. on May 1st to get on the ballot. So there might be other people popping up, but as of now, we have those 4 candidates, and
you read the 2 Dems.
So I don't have bios like at the ready. For Amanda and Connie, but I can
say Amanda and Connie are the incumbent.
Correct.
Exactly. The incumbent school board members. I've been impressed with that. You know, just to throw in my 2 cents, I've been impressed with them as they've been on the school board. You know, one thing that was very important to me is to get SRO or school resource officers in our school. That's something the Democrats, the candidates have opposed in the past and voted against. So. Again, I'm pulling for Amanda and Connie. I think they are they've proven themselves on that school board. I think they do a great job for our kids. So I don't want to skip over talking about them.
Sorry. Yes, totally. I just in my searching online, I hadn't found any campaign stuff for them, although it may exist out there. So I only had kind of those 2 new bios to talk about. There is a League of Women Voters forum on May 14th at 7 p.m. that we'll get to know some of these candidates at. I don't know if everyone's participating. I just know that's the time it's being held. I will be reaching out to all of the candidates to see if they want to join us on the podcast, so we can hear from them directly and talk about what their goals are for being on the school board and their 3-year term on the school board.
All right.
That's my little sum up. School board elections coming up, folks.
Dan, short-term rental, what do you got?
Okay, just one kind of overall update. Commissioner Moran has made it clear this will be moving forward from the city level, and good. I think the city does need to address this, but he coupled it almost always by saying this in the state budget, and he said this oftentimes without qualification. In the state budget, the state will have legislation where the state will create the registry, and the municipalities would have the option of doing it themselves. But he didn't really qualify too often anyway. And it turns out the state legislature did not, or the final budget language did not include short-term rental legislation in it. Now the legislature's in town till June, so that it very well could be done during the rest of the session. In fact, it may very well be likely that happens. But regardless, the city still needs to go ahead and do it. But Commissioner Moran sort of painted it as there was a gun to our head. We had to rush and get it done. And I don't know if I agreed with that from the beginning, because it was 120 day delay on the original legislation anyway. But in any event, there's less of a reason to be urgent about it. But I think the city should be moving forward and come up with a reasonable, measured short-term rental legislation that tries not, like our guest Mr. Goodman said last week, not to please everybody, but to address the goals of the city that I think we all agreed we don't know exactly what they are at this point. We got some ideas what they are because they've been mentioned, but what are they in order, right? What's the hierarchy of them? That I don't know.
And we haven't seen, correct me if I'm wrong, but because the public hearing on this issue has been kept open, so people can comment at the city council meetings with their thoughts, feelings, opinions, but we haven't seen an updated proposal, have we?
No, and I even emailed Commissioner Moran a few weeks ago asking him for that. He promised me something would be forthcoming, but he acknowledged there was nothing out there, which is a bit of a concern as well. Now, granted, if he's not planning on acting on it till July, there's plenty of time, right? Because he wasn't going to get anything done. He acknowledged they won't do anything before track season. Track season will be like the last 150 years and kind of free for all. But it was September, I think, the fall that he was looking for to implement things. So there is some time, but I'd like to see some more transparency. And to your point last week, Robin, I'd like to see collaboration. Maybe there has been, but we, the citizenry, we, the taxpayers, have not been notified of collaboration. It seems to be, it was all in Commissioner Moran's house, so to speak.
Correct. Well, I'm curious to see what, all the feedback and people who've gone to public hearings, how that's potentially affected what he's going to propose. And I think it's a good thing with New York State, because I do think this topic in general is so complicated and nuanced and complex in terms of what we want to accomplish, that time is a good thing here.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. We'll keep everybody posted. And that brings us to almost an hour and probably our cheers and jeers. Yes?
Sure.
What do you think? Look at that crazy animation. Guys, it might be time for me to update our cheers and jeers animation.
No, that's a classic.
You like it?
Anyway, I'll start. I got 2 cheers. One for Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who brought forth legislation to get Ukraine the aid they so desperately needed. He bucked the hardliner in his party, the Moscow Marjorie, and the MAGA troop who was threatening his speakership. And also, cheers to the Democrats who kind of supported him and gave him the confidence he could to do this without worrying about his speakership. So I thought that was a really great moment for our country to kind of to come together to get something that's desperately done. Like I mean, for these hardline Republicans, it is in nobody's interest to have Russia walk into Kyiv. This is ridiculous that this wasn't supported earlier. So cheers to Mike Johnson. My second cheers is also to Mike Johnson, who's going to be going to Columbia University. Colleges, these safe spaces that are free of trigger words are now they are absolute. They're anti-Semitic cesspools right now. If you're a Jewish student, you're harassed, you're yelled at. Speaker Johnson's going to go to Columbia and he's going to see what's going on there. And this is incredible what's going on in our country and how these college students are they're siding with terrorists, they're siding with Iran, they're siding with the axis of evil, and they're not only that, they are really making one group of people, Jewish students, feel horrible. So anyway, those are my two. They're national, but those are my two cheers.
Adam, I feel a little uncomfortable cheering Mike Johnson twice, just in general.
Yeah, well, listen, you don't have, but the point is that this is you can yet politics get in say that, but what he's doing is absolutely the right thing, and he's doing it for the right reasons, and he's going against his party, and he's going against the hardliners. So I totally noted. I know that the Democrats are getting into abortion or gun rights, and that's a different subject. But for right now, these issues, he's on the right side of history.
Yeah, I totally agree. And he gave the finger to the Freedom Caucus and brought forth legislation that absolutely had to be brought forth. So I totally give him credit for that as well, despite all the threats of Marjorie, Taylor Greene and all those fucking idiots. Excuse my language. Dan, do you have a cheer and jeer for us?
I do. I've got a jeer that's going to make Adam jump out of his seat because he's going to agree with me, and you probably will as well. Listen, I'm a fan of the press. A lot of conservative friends of mine are not, but I'm a fan of the press generally. But this article in the Times-Union about the city balking at paying Mayor Kelly, this article by Wendy Liberatore, who I've had good interactions with, but it was horrible. It was so one-sided, and I'm not. You know what? I've never really been the biggest fan of Mayor Kelly, but I'm going to stand up for her here because it's not. It doesn't give two sides of the story. Granted, Mayor Kelly didn't respond. She couldn't respond. But her attorney could have. So I wish somebody from her side would have responded to this article. It's in today's TU. But the opening line, it told me right away where this was going. The city council set aside plans to pay another $4,876 in legal fees for former Mayor Meg Kelly after some commissioners balked at paying her attorney more money because she, and this is the part that bothered me, because she didn't fully cooperate with the Attorney General's office probe of the city's treatment of Black Lives Matter protesters. Listen, that is a contested issue. Her attorney in a previous article showed emails and so forth where the AG's office canceled one of the meetings and so forth. So Ms. Liberatore, qualify that. And how the editors let that get past them, because some are alleging something like that, or it is alleged that she didn't fully cooperate, or the Attorney General is alleging something along those lines. But to assert that without proof really bothered me, and we see that a lot in the TU.
Also, didn't it strike you as weird that they published it today when that happened 8 days ago? Like, clearly, in my opinion, like I looked at that and it was like clearly somebody called up Wendy, called up TU, and wanted that story to be run, because if they were actually reporting it as news, it would have come out a full week ago.
Just to whore out your morals and your values for clicks like Wendy does is she really is I hate to get personal, but she's a despicable journalist for what she does and how she does it, and to call herself a journalist when she's really just she just pushes propaganda. Dan, you're right. I do agree.
Okay, good. My cheer is, and some of you know, and Robin, I think you're gonna get out of your seat and cheer with me. The Bunker. I stopped in yesterday. What a cool place! The Bunker is on Broadway at Congress Street, in the same building as Talbot's and so forth, and FedEx. It's a golf simulator location, but it's more than that, right? It's a restaurant and a bar. It's just so roomy and comfortable. I walked down there. I can't wait to take my daughter there on a rainy day, because I think it is, can be family friendly if you go there early. I'm not going to take her there at 8 at night. And it fits Saratoga perfectly, right? Now, what I hope happens is people give their money to the Bunker for the golf simulator, and sometimes patronize the restaurant, but I hope they also patronize the other restaurants downtown. And I hope they patronize the retail and the other establishments downtown as well. So to me, it's going to be a bit, Saratoga downtown has its own draws, but I think the bunker will be a bit of an added draw. It's a neat place. Check it out.
The Dalton kids love it. So the only thing I would like, bunker, maybe if you could have like an after school prorated rate for like kids, that would make my life a little bit easier because they want to go there all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, but I agree. It's totally awesome.
Give me a rough idea of the pricing to play a game of golf.
I believe it's like $75 an hour for the golf simulators.
Yeah, it's steep.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
My son wanted to go. I'm like, you know what? There are other golf simulators out there that are not 75. I have the same issue as you do about right now. It's not really an issue because they're not really billing themselves as a kid-friendly golf simulator place.
Right.
But
right. Totally.
Nonetheless, doesn't mean our kids don't love it and want to. My son wants to go there all the time to play golf, and it's like, listen, for $75, that's that's probably more expensive than 90% of the golf courses around here for a round of golf.
I know. And it's 70 degrees outside and sunny. We're going golfing the real way.
Right. That's why I'm like, hey, maybe in like the off season, they could do like a school days discounted rate. I don't know. They probably don't want to have kids come in. They probably want people who are coming in and eating and drinking. But
earlier on a Saturday, though, maybe not on a Saturday. But I think there's room to have family-friendly time there.
There is, but nobody wants kids around. Like sometimes I don't want my own kids around.
Well,
I don't see anything being like, let's encourage kids. Anyway, great place though. I've been there once too, and I loved it. I think it's a really kind of high-end, nice restaurant and bar first. And that with simulators. Oh, it's almost like a really cool spot first that just happens to have simulators as opposed to like.
Yes.
Totally agree. Well, I'll do a quick cheer and jeer. It's actually the same topic. It's both my cheer and my jeer. So I wanted to just quickly cheer Saratoga Broadway Deli. Their food is fantastic. And I love going there. And they're kind of notorious for their social media posts. And so this is where the jeer comes in. The owner of Saratoga Broadway Deli posted this that I found just like so disturbing and upsetting on social media. He said, when I opened this place, I knew I would face a certain amount of scrutiny. I figured people would compare a matzo ball soup to grandma's or compare a pastrami to Katz's Deli. What I didn't expect was people asking to see the owner and then making me prove a certain level of Jewishness. Quote, are you Jewish? Which parent was Jewish? Were you raised Jewish? Where are you from? North Jersey? Where in Jersey? So on and so forth. I wonder if other places get grilled like this. Like, let me see your country of origin before you make my sushi. So just the fact that we're living in a world, in an environment where people would come in and ask to talk to the owner and would ask those questions, I just found just blew my mind. And I found so just offensive and like wrong on so many levels. And I think the owner of Saratoga Broadway Deli does just an incredible job. As I said, I think their product is fantastic. Every time I'm in there, it's a great experience. And so just that he would have to be dealing with that in addition to all the stresses of running a business, I just thought was so shitty. And so like people who are doing that, you fucking suck. Stop. Go in, eat great food, shut your mouths and leave. So I just kind of wanted to cheer and jeer based on that post.
Excellent.
All right.
We'll see it.
Well, interesting show today, guys.
Yeah, we've got one comment from Larry Manning. Smash that like. Yes, Larry. Thank you for prompting us. Smash that like. You can subscribe on YouTube and get notifications when we go live on Wednesday, or find us wherever you find your favorite podcast, Spotify, Apple, Amazon. We're all over the place, and we appreciate everybody watching.
All right, y'all. Stay charming.
Signing off. Bye,
Thanks
folks.
for watching, folks.